Welcome back. My name is Matt Reiners. I'm the co-founder of Eversound, and with me today is Tracey Harvey, Regional Vice President of Marketing and Strategic Planning for the Pacific Northwest and Texas at Cadence Living to discuss occupancy. Over the years, Tracey and I have become friendly after meeting and hanging at conferences, giving presentations together, and even been known to do outdoor fitness with using headphones, and we will break into dance every now and then. Thanks so much for joining me today, Tracey.
Thank you.
Awesome. So let's jump right into it. So I know in marketing and sales, we always talk about these referral sources. And I'm curious, how do we go about establishing win-win partnerships with our referral sources? And how have you seen that change with all the craziness that's going on in the world?
Well, the obvious big change is we're still not gathering together. So we're doing everything virtually. So that's the big obvious change. And I can't wait. I'm sure a lot of others can't wait till we can get together again, because that was the number one way to network in the past. But over the last year, what's changed is virtual groups have been becoming a little bit more, they're well attended, one, because I think everyone can make it happen. Two, I think that they are, what's the word? More transparent. I think we're being more authentic with each other, which is lovely. But at the same time, how I see it as a win-win and what I've been doing recently is really, I think, establishing and being proactive in my giving. That's something that I think I was always doing anyway, but I think I've taken it and tried to coach my teams to take it to the next degree even, and really diving into the discovery with our referral sources, because you have to have your top 10, you have to have your top 20, but at the same time, not all fit one, what is that saying? Not one shoe fits all sizes kind of thing. So, yeah. I think that's one way. And then I think just consistent touches and being really creative in how you touch them. So I think you remember at the conference years ago, I put smile cards on everyone's, you always want to leave with a gift. So just like they were invited to a dinner party at your house, you want to leave them, have a table gift. And so when we have 50 plus people in a room, it was kind of hard to think of what could we leave them. And so that's when I gave them those little smile cards, and it goes a long way because you make connections that way.
I think your comment about being more authentic, it's definitely been a period where I think people have been more honest with each other, where we're kind of letting that guard down and putting ourselves in these situations really helps that. And I do find with those little small gifts, it's leaving that memorable impression. And of course, you've always left a memorable impression with me, Tracey. So that's awesome. And thank you. And I see with Cadence, I think I saw one of your communities, you guys had like the red carpet welcome treatment the other day, which is just one of those things, right? It's just that it goes a long way. It's a small thing, but it's just so powerful in the grand scheme of things.
Being proactive with your giving, I think, too, right?
Ooh,
so
yeah, no, it's super powerful. And for you kind of talk about as we go to more of this like digital networking, do you have any best practices for your digital presence in marketing, your network to your community, or just kind of speak to the power of some of the social media website and some of these referral sources?
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like this has kind of been my foundation of where I started my career, even that these best practices have established. So with success stories, right? So organic, or back in the day, it was called grassroots marketing, has always been my thing. I love that. And the organic social media is really important. I think there's three things that I always pay attention to is, can we tell a story? So back in the day, it was Groovy Granny on a spinning bike. That's what grew indoor cycling category, right? So that was a big story, an 87 plus year old lady on a bike. Then also contests are fun. And I feel like that's really helped, especially social media has helped when you have a fun contest, whether it's, that engages the community at large to get involved. It involves family members get involved. Children love it. So if you have a pet contest, costume contest, that's a fun thing. So those really worked over the last year. And then the number one thing I'd have to say out of all that is just what key insights can you provide and educate the public with? And so in our case with senior living, It's so important to provide information that they need to know, that will be helpful to their loved ones. And it doesn't have to be, it's more about that relationship and how do they identify signs of dementia? How do they, engage a loved one that has stopped participating in things? Are they injured? Maybe that's why they're not joining walking anymore. So all those kind of things, if you provide key insights, I think that is a really valuable best practice.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And I think it's kind of that, age old saying of teaching builds trust. And if you are providing these key insights and building that trust, and from a sales and marketing role, someone, if they don't trust you, they're not going to buy from you. And that's just one of those things that you can do to consistently providing those insights and providing those different ways to teach someone something, and creating that social paradigm is where we start to see that trust factor really coming in. And I love the idea you talk about of games, because in addition to the funness of it, you get the competitive juices flowing, which we all got a little competitive nature and spirit to us, which is always great to kind of get that going. And I know you kind of touched on with like the role of technology, and what has the role of it been in your customer journey, and how has it been influential to the prospecting process?
Well, I would have to say, when I thought about this question, over the last 10 years, I feel like obviously senior industry is slow to adapt to technology. We all know that. It's a slow to adapt in industry for a lot of things, actually, now that I think about it, especially when COVID hit, if you think about it. The one thing we were very proactive at was infection control. But technology, when I met you even, I had made a conscious decision in my mindset to stay relevant and learn about technology, because we were always putting seniors in this box saying they don't do technology, they're not going to want this. But I worked for one of the first operators I worked for. He was a very big fan of staying sharp in all ages, and that you could do it at any age. So I kind of started adapting technology mindset then. And when I saw you at a convention in Chicago, I sought you out because I didn't know what you were up to with your headphones. But when I learned about it and was able to really try it, I think that's when you and I put it to play at another national show with with my walk that we did. And it was amazing, not just from the sound quality, but it made me a believer that it could really, really help our older adults, because so many of them in our group exercise programs, they weren't able to hear what was happening, or you always have that person in the back going, I can't hear you, honey. So it really made me a believer of technology. So that was one, obviously Eversound was that technology, but there's other things too, like from the more just listening to what products are out there and being able to involve them into our communities. And I've kind of straddled a couple of different communities in the last year. And, I think that are different organizations. And I feel like the ones that are quick to adapt were the ones that weathered COVID really well. So I'm really proud to be part of organizations that had adapted quickly.
Wow, no, that's a really interesting take, and it makes a lot of sense, right? The ones that are probably more a little, not scared of technology and willing to adopt it, we're better in the long run. And I know.
Yeah. And the one thing I forgot, I wanted to, on that note, I was thinking is it was more looking for things to make it easier for the life, whatever you call your activities people, right? You needed to make it easy for them because their hands are so full. And I used to have that graphic I think I showed in a lot of our things where they're multitasking. They have so many things going on, but technology that makes it easier for them. And when you train them that it can make it easier and make their solutions for their family members a little bit better, or for that loved one, it makes the job easier for them. That is really the biggest challenge, I would say, in having that adoption period happen. But yeah, that's key.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I know Cadence is doing some really amazing things. I visited the community outside of Phoenix, which was beautiful, by far one of the nicest communities I've ever visited. I think it's the only community to this day I've left a Google review for. So you can check that. out. But 5 stars, of course. But one question I would have, especially during like the pandemic, and it looks like we're at the, we see the light at the end of the tunnel here, but how has Cadence Living handled reservations about moving into senior living when the world has been watching communities at the most vulnerable place to be during the pandemic. And, the news always likes to highlight the negative things, but how have you guys handled some of the way people were thinking about senior living and engaging in conversations with prospects and family members?
Well, I can only speak to the last 60 days, but I do know I did keep an eye on everything they were doing. And yes, we have to follow the CDC guidelines and all the state rules because, Oregon is different than Washington. But I think that overall they handled it very, very optimistically. I think that was key as well, because when you have optimistic leaders from the top down, I think that makes all the difference in the world. And of course, census was challenged at different points in time of COVID during the last year, but recently, of the recent months, things are picking up. And I think through the best practices of, sharing good information and allowing for everyone in the public at large to see the engagement level that we provide on the inside in the senior living community has been really, really instrumental in getting the increased move-ins or reservations, as you say. I should make it a reservation process, right? Because everyone should want to come. But every market is a little bit different, but I have to say I'm really pleased to see that how traffic is picked up, because I think family members realize you can't live in fear. And we've got to just promote all the positive, wonderful things that senior living is and not look to what the national news often calls nursing homes. It's not a nursing home. It's really community living. It's like resort living, if you want to call it. So for our communities, at least. And that's why we really, I feel like, are attracting those active agers that want to really live well. And so for us, I just have to say they've attacked it very optimistically. And I think the other thing that has made Cadence really strong right now is our executive leadership team reinitiating kind of our culture. They have a culture tour that we've been doing lately. And that has really panned out when you go to the communities now that we can travel. And when we explain and re-explain our values and our vision and everything that we're doing for not only the team at the community level, but for the family members, I think that goes a long way. And I think that's going to help and boost our overall, growth.
It makes total sense, right? And the organizations that stick to their values continue to bring it front and center. And I love that you guys are even sharing that with the families and really giving an essence of what Cadence is all about. It's no wonder you guys are growing so fast and doing such amazing things. And, to your point about your communities, I do have to say the one that I visited, I live right outside Boston, and they're building a lot of like high end, living for young professionals. And that's kind of how it felt to me. It was just like really top notch. And it was an awesome open house that you guys had that, I went, of course, pre-pandemic, but so
I was wondering, when was that?
Yeah, it was a while ago. I probably had hair or something at that point, but yeah. And then, last question here for you, Tracey, if there's, what's 3 takeaways from your experience? And I know you have a vast experience across, the provider side to the vendor side and some of all the other awesome things you've had. But what are, 3 things that other operators can take away from the impact of technology is having now and as we look into the future for senior living?
Well, I think it's very important that the number one thing is that they look at all methods of technology to adapt into their programming, especially that they train. They need to set up the time and the investment that it's going to take to train the teams, whether it's, and it's training the teams, all like the activity assistant as well. It's not just the director or the regional manager, right? It's that the people on the ground need to have the training. And then I think that's 2 takeaways. I'm trying to think of the third. And I think overall, just being open-minded, just being very open-minded and flexible. That's how I've always worked, operated. And not every day is not the same day, especially in a community. It's always changing. But at the same time, if you have an open mindset and very flexible, I think you're always going to succeed that way.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for making it this far into our interview with Tracey Harvey, Regional Vice President of Marketing and Strategic Planning for the Pacific Northwest and Texas for Cadence Living. Tracey, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Matt. It's always a pleasure.